Boogeyman Ben. Horror Zone.
Hey everyone, it's Boogeyman Ben. Hope everyone's doing well and everyone had a great day. This is going to be part 4 of my Friday the 13th video series this week. Today is, of course, Thursday the 12th. I call it Friday the 13th Eve. Tonight I'm going to be watching as many of these movies as I can. This, of course, is the Blu-ray box set that came out last September, which contains all 12 Friday the 13th films. I love this set 100%. Very big fan of it. For today's video, I thought, again, doing different things this weekend than I've done in previous Friday the 13th related videos. I started thinking, you know, there's a lot of things and a lot of elements about Friday the 13th films that I never talked about all the little elements that make this film series my favorite. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to talk about things like the scariest film, or what I think is the scariest film in the series, the best written film in the series, the one with the best effects, the best death scenes, my favorite death scenes in the series, the best nude scenes, the best survivor girl. I'm going to talk about all of that stuff tonight because it's things that I have not talked about my favorite horror film series of all time. So that's what the focus of tonight's Friday the 13th video is going to be. I hope everyone looks forward to this, and as always, please stay tuned. Okay, to start things off, I'm going to talk about my favorite director from the Friday the 13th series. Might not surprise anybody, but my favorite director is Tom McLoughlin, who directed Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. I just love the way he directed that film because I just feel like it's got a lot of mood to it. It has a real... it's really different from the first 5 films. It really stands out amongst the bunch. Whereas, I mean, there's elements of each of the first 5 films that are different from each other. But I feel like Tom McLoughlin's film is completely different from the first 5 films. And, you know, there's that gothic horror sense to it. There's that sort of self-referential humor. And I also thought he had really strong characters. That's something that sort of started lacking in the later half of the sequels. As much as I love them, I have to be honest. You know, parts 7, 8, 9, and 10, the characters are not as memorable. Even in Freddy vs. Jason, I mean, the big pull for me in Freddy vs. Jason was just see Freddy and Jason fight, and, you know, everything I wanted that film to be, it was. But if I have to be honest, after McLoughlin's film, I don't think any of the characters, any of the kid or teenage characters were as good until the reboot. I thought that's when they actually had some very likable people that you could kind of relate to. The other thing I think that, I mean, the fact that it's also very well directed is he wrote a great story. The fact that there was very little, the gore was very much trimmed down in part 6, but it wasn't needed because the story was so well done. And I really think that takes a tremendous screenwriter as well as a tremendous director to pull that off. To have a series that is known for its gore for the first 5 films in the series, and then have a part 6 come out where the gore is trimmed back, but the story is so much more enthralling and you're invested in these characters. And I think that just speaks volumes for the talent that is Tom McLoughlin. Okay, now we're on to favorite death scenes. I'm going to go through all 12 films in the series. Starting with part 1, of course, Jack's death, Kevin Bacon, I still think is one of the most memorable because it was the first one that was really shocking. Next one after that, I have to go with Mrs. Voorhees. With regards to part 2, I think Sandra and Jeff on the bed, that one's rough. But I think Mark in the wheelchair is just one of the... that's just such a fucked up death. Part 3, there's a lot of great ones in Part 3. You have Vera getting hit with the spear gun, which is the first time you see Jason with the hockey mask on. I love that scene. You also have Andy getting chopped right up the middle when he's walking on his hands and Jason gets him in the hallway. And of course you have Rick getting his head squeezed and his eye popping out, which I still think is just a tremendous scene. It's such a crazy scene. With Final Chapter is a lot more brutal, I think, but I still think Axel getting killed in the morgue, that one is rough. Just the whole head twist, I thought that was just brutal. After that, I think the next most brutal one is probably Jimmy. Jimmy's is the other one that's memorable for me, where he gets, not only does he get a corkscrew to the hand and a meat cleaver to the face, and then Jason props him up outside and nails him outside the door to the kitchen. So it's like, he had something against that guy. In Part 5, I think probably my favorite death scene from Part 5, I love the opening. Even though it's a dream sequence, I still think that's just a really good opening to that film. And I remember as a kid, I was so pissed off that it was a dream, because I thought that was a great opening if Jason just rose from the grave like that. But I love the opening. I also think Tina's death and Eddie's death are probably two of my favorites in it. I also think Demon in the outhouse is another one, because it's kind of got a comical edge to it, but it's also very kind of creepy and sadistic. Part 6, I have tons, especially the opening where Haas gets his heart ripped out in the cemetery. I love that whole opening with the rain and Jason coming out of the grave and then attacking Haas after he hits him with the shovel. There's also the paintballer scene where he kills the paintballers, especially the triple decapitation. The scene in the RV where he slams Nikki's face through the RV bathroom wall. I think that's one of the best ones, as well as Court getting the knife into the head as he's driving. Of course, the sheriff getting his back broken. That's just that whole scene is just terrific. In Part 7 has some really good ones, especially the sleeping bag. Everybody loves that one. That's also one of my favorites. The next one after that would be Russell getting hit in the face with the axe when he's down by the lake. I thought that one was, a lot of people don't talk about that one, but I always thought that one was great. It's one it's got a tremendous setup, but a really bad payoff. And I think it's the one where what this one is the one where Jason goes after Dr. Cruz with the saw. And I still think that's like that's probably one of my favorite scenes of Jason just coming out with that thing. You hear him starting it up, and then you see him come out with it. And I just think it's such a fucking great scene. And then the payoff is so horrible because the MPA cut it, and so when he actually gets to Dr. Cruz and cuts into him with the saw, you don't see it. You see it hit his stomach, and then it's over, and then Dr. Cruz dies. And it's just like, oh, what a letdown. And, but that whole setup is just fucking beautiful, and I still think it's one of my favorite scenes of Kane Hodder as that character. I mean, I just love that scene. In part 8, there's some pretty good ones in part 8. I think probably my favorite one though, and it's you don't even know if the guy dies. I mean, you think he dies, but it's the one where my favorite one of part 8, and it's not even really one you would expect, but it's the one where Jason picks up the guy that works at the diner and picks him up and throws him into the mirror. I don't know why, but that one has always stuck out to me and always has been one of my favorites. And the fact that it's Ken Kirsinger who would play Jason, 15 years later in Freddy vs. Jason is just fucking funny as hell. Part 9, I don't have a lot in Part 9 because, like I said, Part 9 is kind of a weaker entry. But I do love the scene where the girl is riding the guy in the tent and Jason, who has possessed the coroner, stabs her with a tent spike right at the end of the sexual act. And it's just such a rough scene. The uncut version of that is just fucking brutal. I think it's one of the most brutal kills in the series. In Jason X, my favorite is when he takes the girl and slams her face into the liquid nitrogen and freezes it and then slams it on the counter. I still think it's one of the best Jason kills ever. In Freddy vs. Jason, it's got to be the guy that's in the bed and Jason folds it up on him. That's still one of my favorite deaths. The other one's in the cornfield. I love that scene where the guys see him and the guy just starts going like this to Jason and he takes his head and just flips it around real quick. I still think it's one of the funniest scenes ever. And then just after that where he's throwing the machete they set him on fire and then he throws the machete, it goes through the guy. And then he's just slashing people on fire. I just think that's just fucking an awesome scene. In the reboot, the fact that Jason does different things in the reboot, I think is kind of cool because the fact that he uses an arrow, like he shoots an arrow and hits the guy in the head up driving the boat, that one's great. I think the scene where he sticks the spike into the guy's throat, that one's a tremendous scene. When he throws the axe and hits the guy in the back, that one is one of my favorites. And then, of course, when he takes Trent and he slams him on the back of when he takes the knife and he shakes him, and then he slams him on the back of that truck. I still think that's probably one of the best ones, too. With regards to which film I think is the scariest, and I went back and forth with this because I still think the scariest films are the first 5. Even though as much as I love Part 6, I think Part 6 was more of a fun movie than a scary movie. It's just a lot of fun. There's some scary parts, but I think for the most part it's just, by the time you get to the 6th movie, it's hard to maintain that fear factor. But Part 6 is still my favorite. I think the first 5 are the scariest. If I had to pick one out of the first 5, I would have to say Final Chapter. I think Final Chapter is one of the scariest films ever made, and it's scary in the fact that you don't see Jason very much in it. You see him walking, or you see his shadow. You don't really see him until the end of the movie, and I think that was really well done. They show him very little in that film. And it's usually you'll see him walking away, or you'll see him pop out of the lake real quick, or you'll see his shadow on the side of the house. I just thought that was really well done. There's something really eerie about that film, and no matter how many times I watch it, it still scares me to this day. My favorite Jason with the look and the actor that portrayed him is C.J. Graham from Friday the 13th Part 6. I know I've said that a billion times, but I love the way Jason looks in that film. A lot of people love the Part 7 look, and I do love the Part 7 look, but Part 6, for some reason, I love the fact that he had the little belt with all the little knives, and he had the hunter's knife, and I just thought he looked, and with the gloves and everything, I just thought he looked badass in that film, and I just always liked that look for Jason, and that, for me, is the definitive Jason look, whereas a lot of people say Part 7, I always say Part 6. Part 6 is my favorite look, and C.J. Graham will always be my favorite Jason. If I had to say, for me, there's no worse Jason. I love all the Jasons in the series. The only one I have to say something about is Warrington Gillette, who for years went on saying that he did everything in Friday the 13th Part 2, which is horse shit. And I didn't realize that until I read Peter Brack's amazing book, Crystal Lake Memories. The fact that he took credit for stuff that Steve Dash did is fucking bullshit. And part of me doesn't even want to meet the guy because of that. I don't like anybody that takes credit for somebody else's work. And that's always pissed me off about Warrington Gillette. I know he did the window scene where he jumped through the window, and there was a couple of stalking scenes that he did. But for the most part, Steve Dash did all of that work. He was the guy with the sack on his face, and he was Jason in that movie. And I hate the fact that somebody else tried to take credit for that for decades. And it wasn't until Peter Brack wrote that book that you found out that Warrington Gillette was full of shit. That's my own personal take on it. My favorite ending of any of the Friday the 13th films, I think Part 6 has the best ending. Because if they were going to stop there, the story went full circle. You started in the original with Jason having drowned and coming back from the dead to avenge his mother's death. And then in Part 6, you have Tommy putting him back in Crystal Lake. Sort of righting what was wronged. And if they would have stopped at Part 6, even though I would have been very sad because I wanted to see Jason, I wanted to see as many Jason movies as they would make because I just love the character so much. But if they had stopped at Part 6, it would have been a perfect bookend to have those first 6. And I think that Part 6 is the best ending out of all of them. Worst ending for me, now it's hard for me to say this because I actually really like the movie. But the worst ending for me is Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood. The reason why is because, again, the MPA fucked the movie up and the associate producer fucked the movie up. John Buechler has said on numerous occasions that the associate producer on the film, whose name is escaping me right now, wouldn't let him do a lot of the things that he really wanted to do. But at the end of Part 7, you have this tremendous battle with Tina and Jason and Nick and in the house, and it's great. I mean, she's making things fly at Jason. You've never seen Jason take on somebody like this. I mean, she has nails being shot at him. She hits him in the face with a hanging lamp. He falls through the stairwell. She tightens the mask on his face. You see the mask rip off his face and what he looks like. And then she sets him on fire. The house explodes. And then he's back on the dock, and he grabs her and throws her down. And she makes her dead father come out of Crystal Lake and grab him and pull him back under the lake. And I just thought it was really stupid. And even at 14 years old when I first saw it, I just hated that ending. And there was supposed to be like a different ending where her father comes back like a zombie kind of looking thing, because of course he's been in Crystal Lake for a decade. But he just looks like he's got dirt on his face, and he pops up out of the lake and just drags Jason back down. Now, there was another alternate ending for Part 7 where there's supposed to be a guy fishing in Crystal Lake, and Jason pops up and grabs him, kind of doing an homage to Part 1, and then again Part 3, where they had somebody jumping out of the lake and grabbing somebody. But I just thought it was a weak ending for a really good film. I don't know, it's never sat right with me. Even after all these years, it's still the one part of that film that just is like, I just hate that ending. I think they should have just ended it with the house exploding. And then you not knowing if Jason was still in the house, if he got out, and then Part 8 picking up from, the wreckage of the house or something, because I just thought that would have been better than the way it ended. Okay, best nude scenes. Now, as a young man, I thought there was a lot of hot ladies that were in these Friday the 13th films, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. I'm sure a lot of people that watch these videos can share my sentiments. Number one for me, though, has always been Debbie Sue Voorhees, who played Tina in Part 5. Fucking gorgeous woman is all I'm going to say. And the fact that I'm friends with her on Facebook, I've actually written to her, and she sent me an autographed picture, which I have over there on the wall. Awesome lady. Still think she's beautiful even in her 50s. She looks great still. But when I was a kid and I saw that scene, wow. So tying for second place for best nude scene in the Friday the 13th series is going to be Juliana Guile. I think that's how you say her name. She played Bree in the reboot. Best composer of Friday the 13th is always going to be Harry Manfredini. They had different composer. They had Fred Mullen from the Friday the 13th TV series do parts 7 and 8. Now with part 7, they kind of mixed Fred Mullen's score with Harry Manfredini's from the earlier films. And Fred Mullen's score is okay. I love the Friday the 13th TV series, and I felt like his score worked really well for that, but I didn't feel like it worked for the Friday the 13th movies. Harry Manfredini is the sound of the Friday the 13th films, and with Steve Jablonsky, who did the score for the reboot, it was okay. I would have been happier if Harry Manfredini had come back. There was little elements of Jablonsky's score that I thought harkened back to Manfredini's with the that was great, but it just didn't capture the same magic for me. As much as I love the reboot, and I've said on many occasions I do, that was the one element of it that I wish could have been changed. And for the last element of the Friday the 13th series that I want to talk about is favorite final girl, favorite heroine from the Friday the 13th movies, all 12. This one was a tough one, but I have come to a conclusion of who my favorite is, and it will always be Ginny Fields from Friday the 13th Part 2, played by the beautiful Amy Steele. I was honored to have met Miss Steele back in 2012. She's a gorgeous woman, beautiful, one of the nicest people I've ever met. She was so friendly to my wife and I. It was an honor to have met her. And for me, she's always going to be my favorite. And I think the reason why she beat out like Adrienne King as Alice and Kimberly Beck as Trish, to name a few, is just because she was. I just love how smart she outsmarted Jason, which I always thought was really cool. I mean, she knew where he was vulnerable, and she was able to use that to her advantage to survive. And I always thought that scene where she pretends to be his mother is one of the best films in the entire series. It's just it's chilling, and it's so well done, and it doesn't get enough credit. And I really wish Amy Steele could have continued in the series for at least 1 or 2 more films. It would have been great. She's my favorite. She always will be. So that's about it. I appreciate everyone for taking the time to watch this. I really just wanted to do something a little bit different for this 4th video this week. I've been trying to do something different with each one of them. This one I just really wanted to talk about what makes these films so special to me. What are the things about these films that I love so much? And of course, I had to talk about the gore, the story, the nudity, everything that makes the Friday the 13th series so special to me, and why it is my favorite horror film. So I hope everyone enjoyed this. Please share your comments below. Let me know what you think. If you agree with me on some of the things I talked about, cool. If you didn't and you have different opinions about things, that would be awesome. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks so much for watching. And tomorrow I will do my final video for Friday the 13th week. I hope everyone looks forward to that. I hope everyone has a great rest of their evening. And go watch a Friday the 13th film. Take it easy, everyone. Peace.